As we continue to learn more about the deadly synagogue shooting, Jewish leaders in Pittsburgh are meeting to discuss concerns going forward. The Pope also addressed the violent attack Sunday and prayed for God to help, quote, extinguish the flames of hatred that develop in our societies. This mass shooting comes at the end of a week of bomb scares targeting Democratic political leaders and Trump critics across the country. And a shooting at a Kroger grocery store in Kentucky left 2 dead this week. That incident is also being investigated as a hate crime after the suspect reportedly tried to get inside a predominantly black church before going to the store. Heidi Beirich is director of the Southern Poverty Law Center's Intelligence Project. She joins me now from New Orleans. Heidi, thanks for being with us. We saw attacks on certain Democratic leaders this week and now the Jewish community. The Anti-Defamation League reports an increase in hate crimes in the U.S. What's contributing to this increase?
Yeah, it's a pretty serious situation. The FBI's data shows the same thing that you find from the Anti-Defamation League and those numbers about anti-Semitic incidents. We have seen a rising tide of hate across the country. This comes both in the form of hate crimes, which have been on the uptick for some time now, in the form of domestic terrorism and the kinds of incidents, horrific incidents that we've experienced in the last 3 days, and in the level of rhetoric that we're seeing targeting people of color, Jews, and others that are sort of at levels that we've never seen before. It's quite a scary time, and it really started around the time of the Dylann Roof shooting in 2015 and when President Trump now announced his run for office. This has been it's just been a wave of hatred that's been quite frightening.
But to be clear, you said that the church shooting that you're speaking of in 2015, that was obviously when President Obama, I covered that shooting, so I remember it quite well. That was a shooting that took place when President Obama was in office, and he tried to offer words of healing in the aftermath of that. But let's go back to this Pittsburgh shooting. It's being investigated as a federal hate crime. Are there differences in an investigation when it is believed to be a hate crime?
There is. When you're looking at something for a possible hate crime prosecution, you have to look for motive, and you need overt statements from the alleged perpetrator that indicate some level of hate. You know, reporting so far has said that this man who attacked and killed 11 people in Pittsburgh talked specifically about wanting to eradicate Jews. Those are the kind of statements that you look for when you're talking about a hate crime. That shows motive. It shows animus towards a particular population. In this case, it's, rabid anti-Semitism, and that will be the basis upon which a case can be built to use hate crime statutes in this case.
When we look at this issue of hate crimes, Heidi, it seems overwhelming to try to figure out ways to tackle it. Are there, though, things that individuals can do or governments can do to try to help prevent them?
I have to say, when you have good expressions of support from community leaders, from elected officials, public folks, that makes a big difference. When people stand for unity and against hatred and support diversity in this country, that's a very big deal. Another place where we could make big changes really has to do with the online space. One of the things that's been driving a lot of this violence is the fact that hate propaganda spreads so quickly. And I'm not just talking about in hate forums like, a place like Stormfront, which is run by neo-Nazis, but in places on mainstream platforms, including Facebook and Twitter and so on. And those companies have been making a huge effort to reduce hateful activities online. And the more that we can do that, the less likely it'll be that people get radicalized into these ideas.
Because you use the word radicalized, and I was going to say there seem to be some similarities here when we talk about, for instance, overseas terrorists and the way in which their ideology sort of spreads, and this kind of domestic situation when you're talking about hate groups. So I wonder, how does your group try to combat not just the hate crimes and the sort of tools that are used to disseminate that hate, but the very ideology itself that animates people sometimes to act?
Well, we try very hard to debunk these ideas. Unfortunately, conspiracy theories involving Jews are literally centuries old, and it's very hard to convince someone who has come to believe these horrible ideas that they're wrong. But we try to debunk this kind of information. We try to debunk other theories, for example, the kinds that motivated Dylan Roof in the Charleston shooting. He believed that there was a huge amount of black on white crime. That's not true. And we pushed Google to put accurate statistics on crime further to the top. We also need to engage a lot in internet literacy. People have to have a little bit more of a sense of whether they're reading propaganda or they're reading facts. These are all ways that we can combat this kind of stuff spreading and reduce the amount of radicalization that happens, especially when young people are exposed to these ideas.
All right, Heidi Beirich. Heidi, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.